And now people are doing research 6 months, 8 months. They know more about you before you go into it. So you better do your research on them when you go into it. Find out something about them.
I'm here in Portland, Oregon with Kristin Garnett, and you've been in the industry for full-time, is it 3 years?
Yes.
And how have your 3 years been as far as growth and progress?
Continually growing. I'm still kind of feel like I'm in the stages of growing the business. My principal broker, Tim Horst, had told me initially, he's like, 12 to 18 months. Give it 12 to 18 months. And I was fortunate because my husband working full time, I was able to not have to worry about paychecks and things like that. And it literally took that 18 months to get my base up to where all of a sudden things started popping for me. Just constantly the slow and steady. You know, staying in front of people, trying out different ways of marketing myself. I have a pretty big sphere of people between my high school reunion and my group fitness stuff, my kids' schools, and just staying connected and staying in front of people and not making everything about real estate, but somehow it always magically seems to come up. You know, it's like, oh, how's business going? Or how's the market? Or, you know, how many houses did you sell this last year? And, you know, so it just kind of starts the topic of conversation. I'm continually doing that, meeting new people every day. And where you least expect it, sometimes you come across and get clients out of it. So, and they could be on the here and now or in the future. But, you know, my goal is giving myself, I guess, 5 years to get it to where I've got that perpetual flow, and I'm on track for that right now. You know, just continually, like I said, staying in front of people. My social media has been my biggest advocate for getting me out there, and getting my fan base, and, you know, utilizing my smart agent stuff, and I do like Property Pulse. They keep my content relevant on social media, so it's not always about real estate. I have my mom brag moments about my kids with my son graduating college and my other one who will be graduating in May. You know, just so letting people see that there's a human side of me. I'm not all about business, and I'm not that pushy salesperson. And anybody that knows me knows that. It's like, hey, you know, I'll hold your hand, I'll walk you through the process and help you out, but I'm not going to shove it down your throat. I don't want that used car salesman mentality, reputation behind me, because that's not who I am.
Wow. And that to know that as you're going into real estate, and obviously past experience before real estate, you've learned that, it sounds like. Mm-hmm. But 18 months, how many deals did you have closed at the end of that first 18 months?
Well, my first year, I did 6 transactions on my own, double-ended 3. So, which is from what I'm understanding. Total? Well, that was including the double ending. I mean, I had 3 of them that I double-ended, so it was 6, I think. Well, 6 total. And then my second year, I did 10. And again, 2 of those were double-ended. So I brought the buyer in on the listing, which, you know, some people kind of have different opinions about being dual agent. And I believe there's nothing wrong with doing that as long as you're upfront and both parties agree to it. If they don't, then I'll bring somebody else into the equation. But it's just knowing where to draw the line and not, you know, releasing anything confidential that should not be released to the other parties. In some ways, I think personally for me, it's worked out, you know, knock on wood. But I think when I talk to people about being dual agent, it's more about, in some ways it can be more of an advantage because I know what's going to work for both sides, so I can kind of play that mediator and kind of find a common outcome for both parties to keep both people happy, without divulging anything that shouldn't be divulged. So for me, it's worked out. Some people stay away from it like the plague because they don't believe in doing a dual agent type thing. They feel that you can't service your clients properly if you do that. I don't think that that's the case. I've talked to my principal broker about that, and he's like, as long as you keep that line, you're fine. Continuing, I'm on track to, right now I'm about even where I was, and I still have a few more months left in the year. So, right now I've got 5 clients that I'm actively working with, and one listing on the market, one coming on in another week, and I've got about 3 buyers that I'm working with. So potentially I could exceed what I did last year by about 3 or 4 transactions. And that's doing it on my own, not working in a team. So, I have a team with SUMA as far as the people behind me, or resources, but it's all me doing it solo.
Wow. That's pretty impressive to have a strong start and then continued growth, because snowballing is where real estate becomes really successful. And I think, speaking of the dual agency thing, it speaks of your personality of being focused on the outcome versus, just trying to hard sell one side or the other. So it's a quality that I don't see much in the real estate business, because it comes down to communicating between 2 parties for a win-win, not just trying to fight for one.
Yeah, what I've seen in my own experience is, for me personally, it's not about the paycheck. Yes, the paycheck's important, but there's some agents out there that it's all about the paycheck, 100%. And if, that $150,000 sale, in their eyes, that's a waste of my time. I don't want to deal with it. I look at it as, you don't know who that person knows, and maybe they're testing the waters. This could be a potential client. They could have somebody else that they know that is, $1 million sale down the road, and I'm going to treat that $150,000 sale the same as I treat an $800,000 sale. I'm going to put the same amount of effort into it, and they're going to get the same person working with them on either end, just because I feel like they don't deserve anything less just because their price point is lower.
It's really important.
It is.
and not only to, like you said, not miss those you don't know who they know moments, but to have a process and say, here's my process. I do this for everyone.
Yeah.
Because I find when agents have a process and they continue to do that process, it gets better and better. It becomes second nature. That's real important.
Yeah.
I think because you save time, you save energy, and you make more money, all the while enjoying the business much more.
Yeah.
Less stress, because we know there's emotions involved.
Oh, yes.
So if we can keep our process less stress, we can spend that energy on servicing the home sellers or buyers, and then controlling and staying out of the emotions. Because I believe you work with some sticky situations, potential divorces when people are selling. How do you handle that? Because that's a whole nother element.
Yeah, and that can be tricky. I've got a couple right now that I'm dealing with. You have to sometimes be honest. Always be honest, but sometimes brutally honest with them. And just, the reality is, I understand this is what you need, but these are the things that you're going to have to do if you want this to work. And I try to not so much sugarcoat it, but I guess soft sell it in a way that it's not going to offend them, but be honest with them and let them know, hey, I'm doing everything that I can, but if you've got somebody who, they're restricting the times that you can have it shown, and when you do have somebody who wants to see it, they have a fit because you're interrupting their time. It's like, I'm doing everything I can do. I'm spending the money, I'm marketing it, I'm getting things out there. This is what we have to, try to work with the situation and just try to keep the communications lines open with both. I've had situations where I've had divorcees who were amicable with one another and it was great, and then other ones that were kind of toxic towards each other, and it was a little difficult because both parties could never agree on things. So it's trying to play, again, that mediator. You're kind of a social worker at times, and it's like, it can be challenging, but, trying not to internalize it myself, because then what I internalize, I end up taking home to my family, and that's never a good thing either. So just trying to leave it at the door, so to speak. So, dealing with them, giving them the same amount of time, making them feel, I guess, worthy of whatever the situation is for them, but and not disregarding them, but at the same time knowing that you're doing the best that you can do and life goes on. For lack of a better word, I don't know what else, how else to say it. I mean, it is a sticky situation when you're dealing with that.
You're essentially helping them move on with their life.
Yeah.
And that's a very admirable mission. And I've dealt with some divorces, and one, I had to go, the husband wouldn't get out of bed. So I brought I'm sitting in the living room with the soon-to-be ex-spouse, and then I go to the bedroom, he signs it in his bed, and then every time I would show up, the sign would be ripped out of the front ditch and thrown in the bushes because he didn't want his neighbors to know he was selling the house. Oh. And then they wouldn't take the deal. But one thing I learned, I had to do just what you said. I had to keep going back to the deal. How do I bring these people together and so the deal can get done, and then not bring it home with me? Yeah. Not bring the stress home. And I think that's really important to not bring it home with us, because then it not only affects our home life, but our next day, and we lose productivity. It
does. You lose sleep over it. And I mean, I can't tell you how many nights that I've like, oh my gosh, I forgot to do this, or I have to do that. And time is always of the essence in this business. It's like, you could have a deal and they put a deadline on it. If you're 1 minute past that deadline, your whole contract is washed. So it is super time sensitive. And, those little details, it's like, I try to be very detail oriented. And, that was one advantage with working the front desk, that watching all these contracts come through of the agents that did never complete the contracts the way they were supposed to. They'd be missing all kinds of things, and their paychecks would get held up because they didn't complete their documents. And it's like, okay, I know what not to do, and being detailed, being very thorough, explaining the contracts to them. But then I go to bed at night and it's like, I can't shut it down. I'm, all this stuff is going on right now, and I'm trying to figure out, oh, did I forget something? And I'm kind of anal retentive when it comes to doing that kind of stuff. Anyway, my OCD kicks in, and I'm like, my husband is like, okay, shut it off. It's 11 o'clock at night. It's time to go to bed. So, for me, it's just like I'm constantly, my mind is constantly going like, okay, what can I have done? What can I do better? How can I fix this? And, it's like some situations just can't be fixed. And that's the reality of it. Try as hard as you want, but sometimes it's just, there's no win. And sometimes you just kind of have to like walk away. And I had to fire a client at one point because, like you were saying, they had tenants in their house. And I would go stick the signpost in the ground, and I get yelled at because the signpost wasn't there. Well, I just paid somebody to put it there. They took a picture of it. It was there. Their tenants took it out, and they were sabotaging every showing that we had. And, they'd trash the house and do different things. And the lady would start screaming at me and call me all kinds of obscenities and tell me she was going to sue me. And I was in tears and got my principal broker involved. And he just kind of laughed. And he's like, yeah, there's nothing here. Her attorney calls me up and says, I'm trying to get a handle on what's happening. And I just handed it over to my principal broker at the time. And I just said, I had 47 pages of text messages for documentation that, where I just got blown up from this woman. 1 minute she's thanking me and praising me about the good job that I'm doing. The next minute she's turning around and telling me she's going to sue me, and how dare I do this, and I'm under contract. And I was like, okay, part of that contract is to guarantee that I get paid for the work that I'm doing, because I'm working hard for you whether you see it or not. And, and it's like, personally, you go through those bad experiences. I had to finally fire her. I was like, I can't do this anymore. I pulled my sign, I took my lockbox, and then she got mad at me for pulling my lockbox off. And she's like, you're under contract with me. You have to have you have to market my house. And I'm like, I don't have to do anything. I'm done. You're fired. Find somebody else. And as far as I know, her house still hasn't sold at this point. But, I just, at some point, you just have to know when to walk away. And I don't like throwing in the towel, and I don't like giving up. And, sometimes to a fault,
Yeah.
it's not a good thing for me. But, because I was like, I know I can do this, I can fix this, I can make it better. And it doesn't always work out.
Yeah, I've been there. It's no fun, but to realize the value of your time and how it can be spent helping someone who wants help versus
Exactly.
someone who's going to maybe bipolar and going to drive you crazy and really steal your time.
Yeah, and as a new agent coming in when you first start, you want anything and everything. So to have to walk away from something is really hard because you're struggling as it is to try and build your business and to get everything that you have. So it's definitely a learning curve.
Yeah, the walking away can be hard. I remember when I was a new agent, I had a deal and it was a oceanfront property. The buyer came in, cash, everything looked good, put the offer in, and all of a sudden they get really squirrely. And I was out on a boat, it was a weekend, and my broker looked at me, he said, you gotta walk. He said, you have to learn to walk, and now's the time to walk. And it was hard. I walked or fired the buyer. 2 days later, a new buyer came in who was an NFL player and bought it cash. And so I think it's how we value our time. And there's a saying, no one will ever pay you what you're worth. They'll only pay you what you think you're worth.
Yep.
Now, the other part of that is people sometimes think we're worth as much as we think of ourselves. So when we portray the value that we actually offer, I think it really helps. Even in divorces, I mean, I've been in many when they're selling and they're arguing and then they both pit against the agent.
Yep.
And it's like, then you got to stand your ground and say, if you want to fire me, you can fire me, but here's the deal.
Yep.
And
Exactly.
Kind of reels them back into reality.
Yeah.
With divorces, what would be the biggest piece of advice you would give to an agent who says, hey, I might be able to deal with divorcees who have a home?
I would say just, stay true to yourself. Try to, you're going to have to play mediator if it's not an amicable situation. And getting the communication lines open between the two of them. Make sure you're always copying both parties on it so that one can't say, well, she told me this, and you're having sidebar conversations and they feel like they're being pitted against each other, because that's not an okay thing. So, I mean, I have a situation now where I guess now ex is not on the deed, but he's still very much a part of the decision making, even though the house is technically hers. So it's just keeping that communication line open and making sure that he feels included in the situation. So it's not just all about her and I'm going behind his back. And you've got to stay neutral at all times. You can't favor one side or over the other, because it becomes evident and it can create situations that could go against you if you do. So.
Yeah, it makes sense too. Marriages usually fail. Why? Because of a communication issue. And what I found working with people who are going through a divorce, they don't feel heard. And they're not going to feel heard through the whole thing, because there's judges and attorneys and all this mess. Oh. And if an agent can come in there, and if they can just make either party feel heard, I think that's 80% of the battle.
Yeah.
So I think you're right on when you're saying just play that mediator and don't pit them against each other.
You're like a social worker in this business, and a lot of times. One of my first transactions that I had, it was actually about a year and a half in, I had this little guy that I came up with, sweet little guy, had just gotten through divorce. He was living in a fifth wheel on his front lawn. His ex had the house. And it was by chance that I had gotten a hold of his contact information and started working with him, got him in touch with my lender, got him pre-approved, started going out looking for homes and stuff. The day that I handed his keys over to him, he broke down, started crying, and gave me this biggest bear hug. And it was like, my heart just melted. I was like, that for me is why I do this. He's like, I never thought I was going to get into this, especially not this soon, and that this would even be possible for me right now. He said, because I just had a really bad situation. And I mean, you know, he was so happy, and just being able to know that, hey, I'm able to help this guy. And it goes back to just doing the right thing and helping somebody, making a difference. If I can just make the slightest bit of difference, you know, or have the slightest bit of impact for somebody, then I feel good, and that I can sleep at night. So
It's really the purpose of life, or
Yeah.
fulfillment out of what we do is helping others. So
yeah.
that's powerful.
Kristin, let's talk about how you grew your sphere and how you leveraged your sphere into listings.
Well, when I initially started, I sent out the letters and saying, hey, this is what I've been doing, and I just recently got my license. If you're anybody you know is looking to buy or sell, refer 'em my way, kind of thing, let me help them. And one of the first listings that I got was actually one of my husband's childhood friends' parents are like, oh my gosh, she, you know, Kay knows you and mom knows you, and she'd be totally comfortable with you doing it. She wants you to list her house. And it was like, you know, selling the house for my mom. You know, because she's kind of like was one of the neighborhood moms for all the kids growing up, and I've known her for 30 plus years. So it was really walking her through, and you know, she didn't do email. She barely could use a cell phone. She had an old flip phone and stuff. So everything was wet signature. So it was like going to her house and dealing with that, and just you know, walking her through and hand holding through the whole entire process. And, you know, through that, I got another listing out of it through those letters. Her son, after she was done, I sold his house, and then I got a couple buyers through networking, my Facebook, social media. I have a AFA certification group exercise, so I teach Zumba and aqua aerobics, and my network through my Zumba. I have a huge network through that, through JBO baseball organization. My husband coached. So my school growing up, I was on the reunion committee. So, I mean, I had a big sphere coming into it. I think initially I had about 1,000 contacts in my phone already.
Wow.
So you know, and it's like not all my friends were looking to buy or sell, and I'm not that pushy salesperson. So it was just like, hey, I'm just throwing this out there if you know anybody. And, you know, I would get them to share my page and kind of going forward. And it's kind of like just being around it. It truly is kind of almost like an osmosis, just being in it and around it, people connecting. And it's like, hey, you know, a friend of ours was talking about moving to Oregon from Washington, and it's like, do you know anybody in the Oregon area? And it's like, hey, call Kristin. You know, so it's just literally getting word. For me, social media and my sphere have been my nuts and bolts of my business. That's just kind of who I am. I'm not like a cold calling type person. I tend to do more warm market. So
more nurturing.
yeah.
And it might seem natural to you how you're doing it. How are you nurturing the leads? Are you mailing letters, calling people up saying, do you know anyone who's going to buy or sell? Or are you doing something different?
It's a little bit of everything. I think I do, you know, I'll send out Christmas cards. You know, I was always the one who sent out the Christmas cards. I had initially, I think we were doing about 100 cards just for our personal family Christmas cards a year, just mailing them out to people. That 100 has now grown into about 250 or 300 of our family cards that I send even to my clients, because I want them to say, hey, I'm human too. I'm not just all about business. You know, this is my family. But in addition to that, personal card, I do send holiday cards out to other clients as well. I send out little spring packets. I send out my calendars. Through social media, just staying connected with them, wishing them, you know, happy birthday on social media. You get the little alerts from when people's birthdays are on Facebook. So I'll, you know, add that personal touch and, you know, I am them and say, hey, hope you have a great day, whatever, just checking in with you. If you need anything ever, let me know. I'm here. And, you know, trying to stay connected that way. I just think it's really important. I've always been kind of a social person anyway. So shy but social, if that makes sense.
That was my next question. Kristin, you don't come across as a hardcore extrovert.
I'm not.
You're introvert, but you nurture those relationships that you have to grow versus just trying to connect on a shallow level with more people.
Yeah, put me in a room full of people that I don't know and I feel really awkward and, kind of like, okay, I don't fit in here. What am I doing here kind of thing. But, I start making a connection with somebody and then I start tending to warm up to people. Once I'm in, you sometimes can't shut me up. but when I'm around people, I try, especially with like my sphere of people, I try not to make it all about real estate. It's like I genuinely take an interest in their lives and their families and their kids and what they have going on. It's not all about the business and pushing real estate down their throats.
I think that's really critical today, at least, more so than ever, because we have shallow relationships on Facebook as humans. Mm-hmm. We scroll to see what's going on instead of calling. So the story and the human side is really taking off and getting a lot of traction. And it reminds me of Princess Diana. She said, I could never go into a room and talk to a lot of people. I can't joke like my husband. I can't get anyone to laugh. And then she started just telling her story and connecting with people she knew. And that's really where she really connected with her audience, was when she just started talking. So I hear this a lot from agents. They say, Joe, I'm not an extrovert. I can't sell. But I think there's a huge untapped opportunity as an introvert to go in there and nurture relationships. And like you explained before, then it starts popping.
Yeah.
You get those, oh, I didn't know it was here. I have 10 listings. Then 2 days later, I may have 15 or five more, because things just pop up that I've nurtured. Mm-hmm.
And it just, it does happen that way. And I definitely am not one to go into a room and be Miss Social Butterfly. It feels truly awkward to me. I'm almost like scared to go and talk to people. But I'm not antisocial. I'm just quiet, and I just kind of take it all in and observe and watch. And, if somebody starts talking to me, then I'll kind of interact and, let things happen how they do. And, I try to stay genuine to myself. And I think that that's truly the key, is be who you are, be true, because people can see through that. I'm a horrible liar. So if I'm not genuine with somebody, they're going to see right through me, because I wear my feelings on my sleeve. I'm not going to, pull punches with you. I'm going to tell you how it is. I always tell people I wear two hats. I have my, your friend hat, and I have my realtor hat. I try to make friends with all my clients. I'd say 85% of them I've become friends with genuinely, because, that's residual business down the road. But I just try to keep connected and stay true to who I am. And, like I said, if you're not genuine with somebody, they're going to see right through it. I mean, there's people who are very fake about what they do, and that's not who I am. So
it shows in your communication style and how you're connecting with your clients, and you're getting more business that way. And I like how you said, be true to yourself, because whatever we do that's natural to our personality and how we truly feel, it's easier.
Yeah.
It's hard to BS someone all the time and then maintain that facade. And so making friends with 85% of your clients is pretty admirable.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I like building those friendships. For me, like I said, I do take a genuine interest in their kids, and I see, most of them I've connected with on my personal Facebook page as a friend, done a friend request for them, watch their kids grow up, and make comments about it, and it's just important. It's like, and you also stay in front of those people too, because a lot of times, you always hear, oh, well, yeah, I had a great realtor, but I can't remember who it was, or I don't remember their name, and it's just a way to stay in front of people. And, so down the road, when that time comes around, if you're fortunate enough to have that time come around again, your name is still going to be fresh in their minds, and you're going to be relevant to them.
That's important.
So,
How long do you spend on Facebook? Maybe a personal question.
honestly, I I kind of on and off. I mean, I get my ping messages and stuff. I don't post a ton. I do read through a lot of stuff, I'll be honest. In my downtime, if I'm waiting for a client or whatever, I'll kind of scroll through it and see. Usually first thing when I get up in the morning, it's like a news feed, and I'll just kind of check in and see what's happening, and maybe 2 or 3 times a day, but I don't spend a ton of time on it, to be honest. I have, like I said, I post some real estate stuff. One of the companies that I use for my marketing stuff, they post all kinds of ads on real estate stuff, but then they also have, like, what do you prefer, roses or herbs, kind of thing. And, just to get the interaction going on the feeds. I'll have my mom brag moments, and I'll post that all over the place. When my son graduated college, I put it on social media, on my business page and my personal page, because I was proud. It's like, I got my kids through college. Yay me. But that was a pretty big milestone in our family, because my oldest was the first one to go all the way from high school straight into college and graduate college in 4 years. So first generation out of, both my husband's side and my side. So that was a huge moment in our family. I mean, I have my associate's degree, but, I worked, and it took me a long time to get there and figure out what I want to do. And, you always want to give your kids more than what you have, and hope that they kind of do the same thing with their kids. And, seeing them and watching them grow and succeed kind of makes me feel like, okay, I did something right. Me and my husband both did something right.
And that's huge. And even for clients to see that, because if I'm buying or selling a house and I have a good agent who helped me, I feel good about, and then I see that her son just graduated college, I feel I might have contributed to that. It's a pay it forward type of thing you were mentioning. So I think that really concretes trust and rapport, which is important, especially for a referral.
Yeah, I actually had a client who sought me out. They had just moved here. Her husband worked at Intel, and they just moved to the local area. And they had a realtor who they felt was very condescending later, that is what I found out, towards them. Because, as a engineer, he's PhD in engineering. He's very smart, very analytical about everything that they do. And the agent, she said, was extremely condescending to every comment that they, every time they asked a question, he shut them down. And they were really upset behind it. So she wanted to find a new realtor. So she started looking in the local Bethany market online for agents. And she got a hold of our SUMA page, started scrolling through all the agents. And she said the thing that stood out to her was, I was a mom of boys. I raised my boys in the Bethany area. They went to the Bethany schools. I had 2 boys. So she's like, based on your profile and the comments and the things that, we have this thing called fun facts on our website. And it's like, what would you want to be if you could be, and it's like, I want the powers of Wonder Woman. She could do everything. It was like, that was my idol growing up when I was a little kid. And just the different things that she goes, you have that kind of, sound like you have the nurturing sense about you, and the fact that you're a mom of 2 boys. She goes, that really appealed to me, and I feel like that could be, that could work. So can we meet? And so I met with her, and it was a very calming meeting. We instantly connected, and she's like, we want you to be our realtor. And, got them into a house like less than a month and a half later. But they sought me out based on my profile, and because of the fact that I was a mom and I lived in the neighborhood. So it does say something to, it's out there. People look you up. And, back in 20 years ago, nobody had the internet, so you didn't have, or maybe 30 years ago back then, but, it was word of mouth. And now people are doing research 6 months, 8 months. They know more about you before you go into it. So you better do your research on them when you go into it, find out something about them. So I'm always trying to not be that stalkerish type, but I try to do my research. When I get a hold of a client, before I even call them, I try to look them up on social media, try to see what I can find out about them, and get some facts and information so that I can make that personal connection. When you start talking with them, it's like, oh, you play baseball? Hey, so do my kids, and they do this, or my son was in martial arts, or I used to do this too, or in crafting, or whatever the case is, and make that connection with them. I think it's really important.
That is, because the personal connection, and I think this is a really interesting fact that you bring up, because a lot of people leave this out of their story. Mother of 2 kids, baseball, like these personal things. When that client called you up, did they say anything about your accolades, how many houses you sold?
Not one. It was all about my character and personality is what they wanted. All I got was that other agent was condescending, they fired him, and they wanted to find somebody else who would be able to deal with them. And she's like, oh, and by the way, you're going to have to meet our parents too. And, they were impressed when I met the parents, and, the dad pulled me aside and he says, thank you for working with my kids. He says, I know that they're in good hands. And I mean, their parents were like close, they're just a couple years older than myself. So, I could relate to them because it was like working with my own kids kind of thing, just a few years older. And, they were very appreciative of me taking care of them and not treating them as being condescending, or, any question was a stupid question. It's like, well, I don't know the answer to that, but let me find somebody who does, or let me get you in the right direction. And, I truly listened to what they had to ask, because being an engineer type mind, he was very detail oriented on some of the, what some people might think of a little, I'm trying to think of the word, just being very over the top with certain things that mattered. And he wanted to know why, when it came down to the numbers and why certain things were certain ways. And, some people it makes sense, other people it doesn't make so much sense. So you kind of have to take it for what it is. And it's like, okay, so he doesn't know, he's asking, so I'm going to try and find out what I can to answer that for him. So that's what I tried to do.
So you were adapting to his communication style.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which
I'm trying to.
It sounds like you did a really good job. And the engineer did not ask you about all the homes you sold.
No.
So it was just about wanting to be heard, and wanting the information in a way that he could digest it.
And there were first homes, so, they had a lot of questions and they were unsure about things, and I assured them, I'm like, I'm not going to let you go in and make an offer on a house that is not going to comp out. I'm going to do my research, I'm going to run the comps, I'm going to give you a range. I can't tell you the number to put in, that's on you, but I'll give you the range and say, if it was me, this is what my recommendation is, here's the range, these are the facts, you make the decision. And put it off that way so that it's not being condescending towards them, but giving him information. And they say we're not supposed to influence our clients, but the reality is we do. They listen to you, and they'll do what you tell them to do, so you have to be really careful on how you word things. And it's like, in my opinion, this is what I'm thinking, but from a professional perspective, this is what I can give you, and ultimately the decision is yours, not mine. And make that a very clear line there.
Now that's important. It's really important to have that, like, give them the numbers, give them advice. And speaking of influencing, you're influencing before you ever meet them with your online profile. That's influence, and that other realtor influenced them in a negative way.
Right.
Lost the deal. So I think we have to be really keen to how our customers and prospects are perceiving us, and then adapt. There's the old saying, treat others like you want to be treated. In communication, it kind of goes to communicate with others how they want to be communicated to.
Yep.
So it's not always about me and what I want or what I think is right. It's about, are they understanding? Are they hearing me like they want to? If you, what did they say? give someone the help they want, they'll take it.
Mm-hmm.
Give them the help they need but don't want, you're just, we're wasting our time.
Yeah.
So I love the way you're doing it.
Thank you.
I think it's a personal level, which I'm a big fan of.
That's just me. Again, I've always had that nurturing sense about me. I always want to fix. I always want to help. Doing the right thing has always been super important to me, because in the end of the day, I know, my integrity is intact. It's my reputation that's on the line. I'm not going to do anything that's going to jeopardize that. And, being true to myself and being honest. I mean, I'm very transparent with things. And like I said, I'm a bad liar, so I have to be, it's like, that's who I am. If I get ruffled, I'm like, I get all blotchy, and you just see right through it. So it's like, why?
Yeah.
There's no point.
Well, thank you for giving us a little insight into what's going on in Kristin's head. Because it shows in your results, which is a good thing.
Yeah, and it's continually, learning and growing and sticking with it. I mean, there are so many times that, at the 12-month mark, you see people want to just give up. And that's usually kind of the defining line. If you can get through that 12 to 18-month mark, that's where all of a sudden just things start popping. A lot of agents at that time, at that 12-month mark, though, just kind of fold up and throw in the towel and just say, I can't do this. And you have to stick with it, and the whole slow and steady and be true, and, it all comes into play.
So you're saying the first 12 months, slow and steady. So you're doing something. You're not sitting on your hands for 12 months
No.
and just seeing if you can keep your license.
No. It's constantly doing, staying consistent. Being consistent is key. You have to figure out what's going to work for you, and what works for one person may not work for you. And that's it. Some people are all about cold calling. They love cold calling. Me personally, I hate doing that. Back when I was working at a staffing agency, I had to cold call clients, and it's like, I'm good face to face. Get me in front of somebody face to face, and I'm great. On the phone, I suck. I hate it.
Yeah.
Because that's just not who I am. I hang up on those kind of people. So why would I want to do that to somebody else? That's kind of how I look at it. I'll send letters out. I tried that for the first year. I did a lot of letters. I worked a lot of expired listings, sent stuff out. Didn't really yield any results on that. And I was like, okay, am I just wasting my time doing this? I need to find another means of getting out there. And then I started up with the social media. And I found that was a huge thing. For a while, I was showing rental properties as an agent to gain the clients, because then you have their address, you know where they live, you have their contact information, you know how long their lease is. So about the time that they're ready to be done, if they're looking to stay, then you can make that point of, hey, if you're thinking about buying, let me help you. I know what you're looking for. I can base your home search on the type of home that you're living in now, because you have an idea of what their what their taste is. And for me, that helped put a lot of people into my database to this day that I'm still in contact with. And then after that kind of went away, I started doing more of the social media thing. I started with the Smart Agents, handing out the books to people that I felt like were, true prospects for me. And got a lot of really positive feedback with that. And it's just, it just kind of helped to validate things that I'm already saying to people. So.